as we are dealing with introduction to respiration, we need to understand the respiratory system. I have drawn a rough diagram here. So okay, let us label it. We need to know the parts. We need to know the parts because invariably questions are asked, okay, on the diagrams also. They will give A, B, C, D like that, and they will ask questions. So we need to understand the structure. So this will be our what? This is nasal chamber. Okay, this is nasal chamber, and I have explained you, okay, during the starting classes of this life process. Okay, when we are dealing with nutrition. So this will be nasal passage. Okay, nasal passage, and this will be the nasal cavity. So this is nasal cavity. Okay, nasal cavity, and next will be the pharynx. Next will be the funnel shaped pharynx. Okay, where our buccal cavity opens. That is what? Pharynx. Okay, pharynx. And next, this is the larynx. Okay, larynx. Larynx check the passage of food as well as the air. Okay, whenever there is passage of food, okay, whenever there is passage of food, that means this larynx checks that food should not pass through the windpipe, right? So this is pharynx, and this is the trachea. I have told you in the first video. Okay, trachea, they contain what? Cartilage rings. They contain what? Cartilage rings. These are the rings present in the trachea, and this trachea is passing through the throat, right? So trachea is having what? Rings. Okay, rings of cartilage. So these rings of cartilage, why they are present? Because they will prevent the collapse of air passage. They will prevent the collapse of air passage. So the main role of trachea to be present in ring structure is to prevent the collapse of air passage. And next, this trachea is going to divide into two bronchi. Okay, if it is one, we call it as bronchus. So these are two bronchi. Okay, bronchi. These are two bronchi. And next, this bronchi is going to divide into many smaller branches known as bronchioles. Okay, known as bronchioles. Next, the bronchioles will terminate into a balloon-like structure known as alveoli. Okay, alveoli. If these are many, they are known as alveoli. If it is single, then we will call it as what? Alveolus. So since there are many, we call it as alveoli. Okay, alveoli. Okay, now these alveoli are also known as structural and functional unit of lungs. Okay, alveoli, they are known as structural and functional unit of lung. Okay, so this is the left lung, and this will be the right lung, right? So commonly, let me write as lung. Okay, so this delicate organ, lung, they are protected by the ribs. And we have what? Diaphragm. And this lung is fitted into the cavity. So chest cavity, we call it as chest cavity. And the chest cavity is also imagined as room-like structure. Okay, imagined as room-like structure, and the diaphragm is known as floor of the cavity. Okay, floor of the cavity. So this is diaphragm. Okay, this is diaphragm. So diaphragm is what? Diaphragm is the smooth muscles of the smooth muscle, okay, that is present between the thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. It divides the thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. So these are smooth and flattened muscles. Smooth and flattened muscles are known as diaphragm. Okay, diaphragm. So these are the parts we need to understand. Okay, these organs are protected by the ribs. Okay, protected by the ribs, rib cage. Okay, rib cage. So these are the organs that we need to understand when we are talking about human respiratory system. Human respiratory system. Okay. Now, if we see how the air passage takes place in this system, okay, so we will take step by step. Okay, we will take step by step. So we need to know what all steps are followed in the respiratory system. Okay, we inhale air, right? So the passage of air goes like this. Okay, it comes through nasal cavity, okay, and goes through the trachea, and from there it is going to the right lung and left lung, and terminal part of the bronchioles, they are known as what? Alveoli. They are balloon-like structure. And they are numerous. And they provide what? Large surface area for the exchange of gases. They provide large surface area for exchange of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, okay, first, if we see the step, okay, then first step would be breathing. Breathing is also known as what? Ventilation. Okay, breathing. So, breathing and respiration, they will ask questions, difference between breathing and respiration. So, what is the difference between breathing and respiration? Breathing is simply inhaling air and inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. Okay, so that is simply means breathing. But respiration, that molecular oxygen has to go into the tissues or cells, and they have to break down the glucose and produce what? Energy. So that is respiration. So breathing is part of respiration. Okay, breathing is part of respiration, and exchange of gases takes place. That is breathing. So after breathing, what happens? Oxygen from the alveoli, it is diffused into the blood, right? So next step would be transport of oxygen into blood. Transport of oxygen into blood. Okay, transport of oxygen into blood takes place. Okay, transport of oxygen into blood. So if I say oxygen, it would be not good. So transport of respiratory gases. Between alveoli and blood. Is the second step. Okay, transport of respiratory gases, okay, between alveoli and blood. Is the second step, and the third step is transport of oxygen through blood. That transport of respiratory gases takes place. Okay, transport of respiratory gases through blood. Now it is through blood. Okay, transport of respiratory through blood. Now from the blood, that respiratory gases, they will be reaching to all the tissues, right? So transport of respiratory gases from blood to tissues. Okay, next is transport of respiratory gases from blood to tissues, okay. And there is special mechanism known as diffusion. Special mechanism known as diffusion, okay. By that diffusion, what happens? Oxygen gets into the tissues and carbon dioxide from the tissues, they are sent into the blood capillaries or blood directly, okay. So this is fifth step that we are looking about. And now, this is the fourth step, and now fifth step is the oxygen is given to the tissues, and oxygen helps in breakdown of glucose to release energy. These are the 5 important steps we need to know. Okay, first one is breathing. Breathing simply means inhaling and exhaling of gases, and transport of respiratory gases between alveoli and blood, from alveoli and blood. So alveoli, they will have what? On their walls there are many blood capillaries. So from alveoli to blood, exchange of respiratory gases takes place. Then transport of respiratory gases through the blood, okay, through blood is that respiratory gases, they are transferred. And next one, transport of respiratory gases from blood to tissues, takes place. And finally, that respiratory gases, for example oxygen, if it is aerobic respiration, oxygen helps in the breakdown of glucose to release energy. These are the 5 steps we need to keep in mind. Okay, so as I told you, when oxygen reaches into the blood, when oxygen is diffused into the blood, okay, if that blood is rich in oxygen, we call it as what? Oxyhemoglobin. Okay, oxyhemoglobin. Oxy means what? Oxygen. Hem means the iron part of the blood cell, and globin is the protein. Globin is the protein. So if oxygen is attached with the iron protein, okay, known as oxyhemoglobin. If it is carbon dioxide, then what we call it as? Deoxyhemoglobin. Okay, deoxyhemoglobin. Okay, these 2 terms you need to keep in mind. And next, the mechanism of breathing. So what is the function of diaphragm here? And what are the functions of the ribs? Okay, what are the functions of ribs? When we inhale, okay, we are putting pressure to the diaphragm. That means diaphragm contracts when we inhale. When we exhale, diaphragm gets relaxed. Okay, contraction and relaxation of diaphragm helps us in breathing. Okay, and when we are inhaling, ribs they expand and chest cavity becomes broad. Ribs are expanded. Okay, and lungs are filled with air. Okay, when we exhale, along with carbon dioxide, this chest cavity becomes what? Contracts. Chest cavity contracts. Then that carbon dioxide is released out. Okay, and during the breathing cycle, please note, okay, there is always residual amount of gas. Okay, residual amount of gases present in the lungs during breathing cycle. Residual amount of gases will be present in the lungs. Okay, why? To ensure enough time for the oxygen to be absorbed and carbon dioxide to release in the lungs. So there will be always residual amount of. Okay, so this was the mechanism of breathing, and I told you that when oxygen is combined with the hemoglobin, it is oxyhemoglobin, and when carbon dioxide is combined with hemoglobin, it is known as decarboxyhemoglobin. Decarboxyhemoglobin. Okay, so this was the respiratory system of human and the mechanism of respiration in human. Now if we see the respiration in plants, plants they will have what? Plants they will have stomata on the leaves. Through this stomata they can exchange gases. And the lenticels present in the stems. Lenticels present in the stems. Okay, they are porous tissue. Okay, they are porous tissue and they help in plants in respiration. They help to plants in respiration. Stomata and lenticels. Okay, stomata and lenticels. And we know that in plants there are more intercellular spaces. So these intercellular spaces, that means what? This is one cell, and this is one cell. Okay, and here we find what? Intercellular space. This is intercellular space. So this intercellular space, they ensure that all the cells they get sufficient amount of oxygen. Okay, sufficient amount of oxygen. So oxygen is required by the cells for cellular respiration. After cellular respiration, the byproduct is what? Carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide gets diffused into the intercellular space and oxygen gets diffused into the cells. Okay, this is how respiration takes place in plants. Okay, and if we see in aquatic animals, okay, so aquatic animals, okay, for example fish, best example fish, and even prawn. If we see, they have what? Gills. And the amount of oxygen present in the water is less compared to the oxygen present in the environment, right? So these fish and prawn, what they do? Okay, they breathe faster. Their breathing rate is faster in order to collect more oxygen that is dissolved in the water. So these aquatic animals, okay, they breathe faster and their breathing rate is more faster. So questions are asked in this, okay, in which terrestrial or in aquatic animals the breathing rate is more? That means your answer should be in aquatic animals. Why? The amount of oxygen present in the water is low compared to the oxygen that is present in the atmosphere. So that's why the breathing rate is more in aquatic life. Okay, now we will see few of the organs, okay, that are helping in respiration. Okay, so These are, for example, organs that are involved in respiration. Organs of respiration. Okay, we know that organs like skin, they are useful in respiration. For example, in this skin, okay, respiration is also known as cutaneous respiration. The respiration through skin is known as cutaneous respiration. Cutaneous respiration, and this is seen mostly in earthworms and frogs. Earthworms and frogs. So the respiration through skin is known as cutaneous respiration. Okay, and examples are earthworms and frogs. And the respiration done by lungs. Okay, and all the higher vertebrates, they respire through the help of lungs. Okay, and if it is through the lung, we call it as pulmonary respiration. Pulmonary respiration. And example is what? All the higher invertebrates. Okay, all the higher vertebrates. And the third one is through gills, right? Is through gills. Okay, if it is through gills, we saw that fish and prawn, they respire through gills. If it is through gills, then it is known as branchial respiration. Branchial respiration. So remember these terms. Okay, they will ask in objective type of questions. Very important. Cutaneous respiration means what? It is through skin. Pulmonary respiration means through lungs. Branchial respiration means through gills. So these are some terms we need to keep in mind. One more respiration. Okay, like insects and cockroaches. Okay, how they respire is by the organ known as trachea. Okay, so this system of respiration is known as tracheal respiration system. Okay, this respiration is known as tracheal respiration. And example, if we see all insects, okay, insects and even cockroaches. Okay, these are few important terms we need to keep in mind when we are talking about respiration. So, thank you children. Have a nice day.